Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Hashem. I'm the chair of the Committee on Agriculture. Right next to me is the vice chair, Amy Peruso. And we also have Representative Loen, Martin, Matayoshi, Todd, Tokioka, Matsumoto in the committee. Today is March 19th, 2021. It's 10 a.m. and we are in the state capitol in conference room 325. So first up, we have SB 1026 SD2 relating to the animal industry special fund. First, we have Department of Agriculture in support.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Felishima Bukuro Geyser, Chairperson, Hawaii Department of Agriculture. We stand on our written testimony in support. This will allow Animal Industry Division to deposit fees generated by the veterinary laboratory and animal disease control into an existing fund to assist with its operations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all the people that we have registered to testify. Nobody else, and I've been signaled there's nobody else. Members, do you have any questions regarding SB 1026? Seeing none, we're moving on to SB 1387 SD1. First up, we have DLNR with comments. Dave Smith, are you on?
Hello, my name is Patrick Chi. I'm here to represent for Dave Smith, Chair Hashem and Committee on Agriculture. I'm here to represent the Department of Land and Natural Resources. My name is Patrick Chi, and I'm from the Pacific Cooperative Studies Unit of the Research Corporation of the University in cooperation with DLNR, and I've been asked to represent the department on this bill. The department stands on its testimony of comments, and I am available to answer any questions should the committee have any.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Poi Dogs and Popoki in support. Alicia, are you there?
Yep. Good morning, Chair, and thanks for hearing this bill. I just wanted to preface by saying I'm a former director at the Hawaiian Humane Society. I founded Oahu SPCA in Poi Dogs and Popoki. I've been rescuing animals for 30 years, and I am a cat colony caregiver for 15 years. I wanted to make sure you knew that because everything that this bill does is about boots on the ground. This is those of us who are out doing the rescuing, doing the saving the lives, taking care of these animals. This bill specifically addresses the concerns that we're facing out in the community. And it has a lot to do with the animals that are getting euthanized by our animal control contractors, including the Hawaiian Humane Society. They basically have 48 hours if they don't have any kind of ID. And if they have ID, they get 5 days before they're selected for euthanasia. That is why we need this bill. The single most effective way to save animal lives is to avoid having them enter a shelter in the first place. So what this bill does is it enables the community, those of us doing rescue, if we find these lost and stray animals, it enables us to return these animals directly to their owners, effectively bypassing animal control and the shelters, and therefore saving lives. Remember, one less animal in the shelter means room for the next animal that comes in. I wanted to address just a few things because it's very specific to what's happening in the community. Number one, as a cat colony caregiver, we need cat colony caregivers to abide by this law. The microchips have been around for over 25 years. Almost every cat in my colony is microchipped and sterilized. But there's no microchip police running around. If the bill passes, they're not going to go into the colonies and go, you're in violation of the law by not microchipping that cat. You can't even get close enough to the cat to scan it for a chip, let alone trap it to get it sterilized. So I want to be clear that the testimony that casts doubt upon caregivers being put under this system, it's not logical. It doesn't make any sense at all. And remember, any cat trapped that doesn't have an ID, 99% of them are going to get euthanized by animal control. So it really, that whole premise that's being put forth about not including cat colonies under this law, that premise is a failure. Requiring animal control to utilize.
Lisa, can you sum it up? I support the bill, so.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure you knew that what's happened in the last 5 days is we have experienced firsthand the situations where the vets have refused to release the chips to the people that found these animals. And that was just 2 days ago. And we just got another call from the Hawaiian Humane Society. Again, their failure to file the found report that gives us the microchip number to be able to follow up and save these lives. I mean, in just the last 5 days, we have experienced the two main points of this bill, which is to require them to use the found pet alert by these national registries, and for these folks to release the microchip to the finders and the rescuers. So I want to make sure you knew we're experiencing this firsthand, and we really need help. This bill would help us save more lives.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Hawaii Association of Animal Welfare Agencies in support.
Hi, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Committee on Agriculture. Stephanie Kendrick with the Hawaii Association of Animal Welfare Agencies. Our members comprise the largest local animal welfare groups across Hawaii, and our members absolutely agree that microchipping is the gold standard of pet identification and the most efficient way to get lost animals home quickly. Our members support this measure. We have requested a brief specific amendment because this bill creates a definition of cat ownership at the state level for the first time. And our members are concerned that that could have unintended consequences for cat colony caregivers. The amendment is in our written testimony, but I just want to reiterate it here. We're simply asking to add the phrase that this measure is not intended to apply to animals being cared for as part of a designated population management program. That language is taken from the committee report when our animal abandonment law was passed to make sure that cat colony caregivers were not going to be punished under that law. And we're asking for it to be included here as well. Again, HOWA is in support of this measure, and we thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all we have registered to testify. We have 5 other individuals in support and 3 people in opposition. Members, are there any questions?
Excuse me, Chair.
Is there anybody else wishing to testify?
Yes, Department of Agriculture. I'm sorry if you didn't receive our testimony.
Okay. Department of Agriculture, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. The department stands on its written testimony. We have a concern about the definition, and we suggest and request that the state quarantine facilities be excluded from the definition of owner. The definition is quite broad, and we're concerned that it impacts our quarantine station animals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, do you have any questions? Seeing none, yes, I do have a question. Department of Agriculture.
Yes, Chair.
So if we take the amendment that says we ask the committee to amend this bill by adding the phrase of this measure is not intended to apply to animals being cared for as a part of a designated population management program, will that alleviate your concerns?
I'm going to refer to our state veterinarian, Isaac Maeda, if he can be allowed to speak. You know, besides the animals that we keep in quarantine, sometimes we do seize prohibited animals, and we hold them in our quarantine facility. They're hybrids of domestic cats and dogs. Is Dr. Maeda allowed to speak?
Yes, please do.
Hi, Isaac Maeda, Administrator for Animal Industry Division. Yeah, our concern feels that the way you're wording it about the population, the suggestion about population management for cat colonies would not apply to the state's quarantine and plant quarantine programs because we're actually doing disease mitigation quarantines or prohibited animal entry type of situation. So it would not, even that amendment would not cover us
Okay, thank you. So what is the specific wording? I'm sorry, I don't have your testimony in our packet for some reason. Can you give me the exact language that you would like for me to add to exclude Department of Agriculture?
Phyllis, do you have that?
Yes, we're just asking that state quarantine facilities be excluded from the definition of owner. And we kept it broad because this would include both our plant quarantine, animal holding facility, and our animal quarantine facility.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you resend that testimony to my office?
Thank you.
Or coordinate to
I
get
apologize.
that. Thank you very much. Members, are there any other questions? Representative Tokioka.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Maeda, thank you so much for everything you do and all your hard work. So, sorry, my phone's ringing. I understand what you're talking about, removing the Humane Society or your department from the list of cat colonies. But in your definition, what is besides what you guys do, what is a cat colony? Because what comes to mind to me is on Kauai, next to Walmart and next to Costco, there are huge colonies of feral cats and people take care of them. So I don't know if that's in the definition of a cat colony or feral cats. So can you help me with that, understand that?
As far as the department, we don't actually have definitions on those kinds of things, but your interpretation as far as collections of feral animals or animals under control by a group, usually animal welfare, is accurate. Maybe one of the animal welfare organizations would like to have some input on that, but that's our understanding of a cat colony as well. It's a managed population by a caregiver.
Okay. So I guess maybe Stephanie Kendrick from Animal Welfare Agency. Can you help me understand that?
Aloha, Representative. Yes, Dr. Maeda, I think clarified it beautifully. That is what we're referring to. It's volunteers who have, at their own expense, gone in and spayed and neutered and tried to manage populations of free roaming cats in order to reduce the population over time. And in general, caregivers do microchip those animals when they spay and neuter them. So they would largely be compliant with this new law. However, some of them have been at this for decades, and there are likely cats who are spayed and neutered in their colonies who are not microchipped. It would be very difficult for them to go back and retrap those cats for the purpose of microchipping. As well, there is abandonment in colonies. And so at any given time, there will be animals in the colonies who have not yet been trapped for spay, neuter, and microchipping. So we just want to make sure that this law isn't used to penalize those folks who are going out of their way to manage these populations.
Yes, it would be hard for them to capture them, to microchip them. I'm assuming it'll be equally as hard for them to catch them, to spay and neuter them as well, right?
Well, the ones who have already been caught for spay and neuter tend to be more trap shy, so they're more difficult to recapture. Whereas the caregivers are very dedicated to trapping the cats who they have not spayed and neutered, because their whole purpose is to manage this population down and not to have more kittens and more breeding.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you both.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, are there any other questions? Seeing none, next up, we are moving on. Next up is SB 339. Relating to IAL. First up, we have DOTAX with comment.
Hey, good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members. Josh Michaels on behalf of the Director of Tax. We'll stand on our testimony offering comments, and I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Budget and Finance. Craig Hirai is not on. Next, we have Department of Agriculture in support.
Yes, thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. We stand on our written testimony in strong support.
Okay, next up, we have Hawaii Farm Bureau in support. Ryan, are you on?
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. Will stand on a written testimony in support.
Okay, hold on. Next, we have Hawaii Crop Improvement Association in support.
Emmanuel Ziwakawa, I'm here on behalf of the Hawaii Crop Improvement Association. We'll set out our written testimony in support of this measure, and I can answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That is all the people that we have registered to testify. We have a few more individuals in submitted testimony and support. Is there anybody else wishing to testify? Seeing none. Members, is there any questions? Seeing none, we're moving on to SB 186 HD1. First up, we have Department of Agriculture in support.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We will stand on our written testimony supporting the intent of the measure.
Okay. Next, we have Hawaii Farm Bureau in support.
Thank you, Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony in support.
Okay, thank you very much. That is all the people that we have registered to testify. We have a couple more organizations that submitted testimony in support. Is there anybody wishing to testify? Seeing none. Members, are there any questions? Seeing none, we are moving on. Next up is SB 335. First up, we have ADC with comments.
Good morning, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, go on. Jimmy.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you for allowing us to testify. We are, we're submitting our written testimony and with comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have Department of Agriculture in opposition.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The department stands on its written testimony available to answer questions. We respectfully oppose the bill because we have concerns of how it will impact our lease conversion provision in our program. And then also that, it doesn't give us the flexibility to allow our lessees to renew their leases that are in industries such as nurseries, landscape, agroforestry, and energy crop production. So those are our comments, and we're available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, we have Hawaii Alliance for Progressive Action in support.
Good morning. Hi. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Annie Frederick on behalf of the Hawaii Alliance for Progressive Action. HAPA will stand on our testimony and support, but just briefly wanted to highlight a few of the reasons why we believe that the committee should consider also strengthening the measure. We believe that some of the special powers and exemptions granted to the agency have created an unlevel playing field for certain small farmers and ranchers seeking leases. Several of the farmers and food systems expert we spoke to believe that an inclusive stakeholder-driven process is desperately needed to create a plan for the future of Hawaii's agricultural lands and water systems. The ADC was tasked with creating a strategic plan 27 years ago. Today, a well-developed plan is still vitally needed to advance a comprehensive and sustainable approach to managing Hawaii's agricultural lands for future abundance. Should the committee consider mandating such a process or a task force, please consider including regenerative and organic farmers, representatives from some of the many local organizations engaged in INA-based projects that incorporate restoration of Native Hawaiian food systems, local food production, community education, and environmental stewardship. One of the failings of the ADC has been its narrow focus on supporting corporate agribusiness for export. Any future planning process, study, or task force should incorporate a comprehensive food system-wide analysis to identify opportunities along the food chain for local institutional procurement, regional aggregation, and other efforts to make small-scale regenerative farming solutions more viable. The committee should also consider including representatives from environmental organizations, a regenerative organic farmer to the board of the ADC. This will ensure that the agency has the internal knowledge and capacity to implement its mission. HAPA strongly supports SB 35, and thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have food policy interns in support.
Yes, good morning, Chair. Thank you for giving us a opportunity to give our testimony. We stand in support of our written testimony. Although we are suspect in ADC's capability, there is still good reason to be excited about this bill because it gives us a chance to double up food production to achieve the 2030 sustainability goal. And also it is in line with the 2050 sustainability plan to reduce the risk associated with dependence on imported services and products. Also, it builds resilience to address the impacts caused by climate change and preserve the aloha spirit and create new economic opportunities in Hawaii for present and future generations. It is very important to keep that in mind because that is Hawaii's goal for 2030 and 2050. Just by replacing 10% of imported foods with local produce, this contributes to $188 million in sales added to Hawaii's economy. And it also provides an additional 2,300 jobs for our local residents. The added benefit is a decrease in carbon footprint of up to about 6.7 to 7.9 million pounds. So there you go. It addresses those sustainability goals. Also, we would like to emphasize the importance of small farmers in this leasing process. If more small farmers are going to be considered for leasing these lands, the more diverse our agricultural system will be, and the more resilient it will become. And it allows us to predict productivity outputs in order to plan for the procurement of imported foods, and in the long term, it makes us less dependent on imported foods. So we have seen how that impacted in this pandemic. A lot of our local residents suffered food insecurity. People had to fall in line to get food aid. So, or from the contributions of others that have the resources to give, but also appropriating land to small farmers allows them to scale up their production. So I think I've said enough. I don't want to take up a lot of time. So that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next up, we have another testimony from Food Policy Interns. Do you wish to testify again?
Hi, this is Kelsey Amos. I'll be testifying, I guess, for the organization or as an individual. We support this bill because of the 50% land in local production for local consumption measure that it includes. However, I just want to state that we're feeling a bit of mistrust towards the ADC's leadership, given the recent audit and report from UHERO. The ADC was created in 1994, which is when I was 6 years old. Since then, I feel like the public has learned so much about Hawaii's import dependence, the negative health outcomes of processed food diets and their disproportionate effect on low-income communities, how much industrial agriculture contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. By some estimates, it's anywhere from 30 to 50% of greenhouse gas emissions. And we've also more positively learned about how regenerative agriculture practices can actually sequester carbon and improve the environment and the watershed, and how Hawaiian agricultural practices fed a huge population sustainably here on the islands pre-contact with no imports. So I support this bill. I think it would be amazing to put 50% of land to local production for local consumption, but I would also like to see some kind of discussion or leadership around a vision for agriculture that takes into account the nexus of challenges that we're facing right now, that the food system and agriculture is inextricably linked up with. There are already many smart people working on this at the grassroots, as well as in more, more nonprofit and business circles and intellectual circles statewide. There's efforts like the Agricultural Response and Recovery Working Group that has wonderful policy recommendations. The Aina Aloha Economic Futures Group has policy recommendations. There are organizations that put together the massive giveaway of taro huli this year at the beginning of the legislative session for what they're calling the Year of the Farmer. And there's tons of conversations about this going on at Aina Restoration workdays, school garden classes, over meals cooked by locally sourced meals cooked by chefs or home cooks all across the islands. So I'm really for greater vision and leadership to try to address the challenges that we can address here locally through our food system and agriculture. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have an individual by the name of Clayton Kubo.
Thank you very much for letting me testify. Right now, I'm out in the field, hunting. And this is how awesome that Zoom is. Okay, so I'm in support of this bill, but changes needs to be made because of the mistrust of the ADC leadership. Majorly. The audit had definitely proved something. So hopefully you guys can, insert something into this bill. Yes, and 50% food production, but basically, has the ADC already been doing what they're supposed to be doing? That is one question that I have. Thank you very much for letting me testify. And yes, I am definitely trying to gather. Mahalo nui. Aloha.
Okay, that is all the members that we have, or all the individuals that we have registered to testify. Is there anybody else wishing to testify? Seeing none, members, are there any questions? Seeing one, Vice Chair Peruso, go ahead.
For Mr. Nakatani, please.
Yes.
Aloha. I see in your testimony some analysis of the work that ADC is doing. And at one point, you say that over 1,000 acres of Galbraith land are licensed to small and medium farms, growing food for the local consumer market. And I'm wondering how you define small, first of all, and then how you define medium.
That's a good question. I mean, that's a question maybe when the legislature tells us to do small farming, what does that mean? My definition, or the USDA definition, is somebody that small farmer is not more than $250,000 gross per year is a small farmer. That's kind of our definition, what we need to follow. But there's no real definition in the state law that defines small or big, etc. But if you follow USDA's definition, I think that would suffice.
So legislators should not be misled to believe that these are farmers working on acreage of 20 acres or less, or anything to that effect. That was brought up, but I mean, I don't think you can judge a farmer's success on, the footprint. Now, if you do. That's fine. I understand the definition you're using. That was my question. Thank you. The next question I have, do you mind if I ask another question, Chair?
Go ahead.
So the second question I have, you argue that we should not, quote, limit ourselves by regulating the size and the type of crops grown on state lands. So is it your position that we should not constrain the size and the size of the farms or the types of the crops grown on state lands?
I think what the emphasis was that, for us, we're going to do the 50% is not an issue for us. I think that the Department of Agriculture testified that it could be for them. But because our footprint is pretty small, growing 50% of our food on Oahu anyway, is not an issue because, we just sent out a notice that we're going to do, and food production is a priority for us. And so that's not an issue for us.
So you're saying it is okay for us to regulate the size and the type of crop?
Let me finish first. Because what we got to look at is that what I said before is you got to remember that it doesn't matter on the size. the operation needs to be economically feasible. And when government or somebody starts to dictate what you should grow, when you should grow, what you should do, I think that's not proper. And, the farmer should decide what he wants to grow because, that's his livelihood and that's the risk of, him being successful or not. The other thing is that the bill, while I agree with, producing food crops, is somewhat narrow for the future. And I'm saying that what if, hemp becomes, is something that we decide that we want to grow more of, things like that, or non-food production crops becomes,
Right. I understand.
viable.
I'm
Then
not
what do you
asking
do?
that.
Yeah.
But aren't these state lands? So you're saying that the state should not be involved in regulating, but aren't these state lands? These are not private farmers.
That's a policy question, Representative Peruso. If you choose to regulate what should go on state land, then I think that's your prerogative. But I don't think that the state or the government should regulate anybody in business on what they should do, especially with their success. I mean, like I said, economic kind of drives everything. If it's not profitable, then why would anybody do farming? Why would anybody do in business? I think that's the emphasis that I want to put before this committee.
So are you differentiating agribusiness that's done on state lands under ADC from the Department of Agriculture? So are you saying that we can regulate and provide oversight for Department of Ag, but not for ADC lands?
I don't really understand your question. I mean, can you read? I don't. What do you? What? Yeah.
I just have one final question, Chair. So I'm wondering about the status of the plan that I asked you to initiate. I have not heard anything from your office about the community-based planning process with respect to. Oh, correct. So I think it actually has to do with his testimony. So your testimony, Mr. Nakatani, talks about your position that the state should not be involved in regulating and planning.
I'm saying the state should not be involved in regulating what the farmers grow. And so, if it's not viable, and wouldn't the state be liable for telling somebody what to grow, how to do it, and everything else like that? I don't think that's proper. I think that's up to the private sector to decide what is success or not success. As I said, everything needs to be economically viable, or it doesn't really make any sense.
So I guess just a last question to clarify, do you see the ADC as part of the private sector then? I mean, do you see the ADC as the state or the private sector?
The Agribusiness Corporation is part of the state. Okay, we work closely with the Department of Agriculture. Our missions are somewhat slightly different because what we're trying to do is we're trying to, on a fast track, develop vacant agricultural lands that have come up because of closure of plantations. That's our mission.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have SB 1297. Oh, members, are there any other questions? Sorry. Seeing none. Hold on. Let me get my thing. Am I correct? Am I on the right track? Okay, next up we have SB 1297, SD1. First up we have Hawaii Department of Agriculture in support. Phyllis, are you there?
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. We stand on our written testimony in support of the measure.
Okay, next up we have Maui Grown Coffee Inc. in support. James Kimo Faulkner, are you there?
Aloha, Chair Hashem, Vice Chair Peruso. My name is Kimo Falcon, President of Maui Grown Coffee, and I stand in support of my written testimony. I'll be standing by for questions.
Okay, thank you very much. That is all the people that we have registered to testify. Is there anybody else wishing to testify? Seeing none, members, are there any questions? Seeing none, we're going to recess for decision making. Okay, good morning, everyone. This is the Committee on Agriculture. We are reconvening for decision making. First up, we have SB 1026 SD2. Chair's recommendation is to pass this as is. Any comments or? Yeah, no comments?
Okay.
Okay.
Chair's recommendation is to pass SB 1026 SD2 as is. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Lowen.
Aye.
Representative Martin.
Aye.
Representative Matayoshi.
Aye.
Noting Representative Todd's absence, Representative Tokioka.
Aye.
Representative Matsumoto.
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation has been adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have SB 1387. Chair's recommendation is to take the amendments to add this measure is not not intended to apply to animals being cared for as a part of a designated population management. And we're also going to take the Department of Agriculture's recommendations to state the Department of Agriculture branch quarantine division will be excluded from the definition of owner. I believe that's the exact phrase that they wanted. Okay, that's it. Members, are any questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Chair's recommendation on SB 1387 SD1 is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Noting the excused absence of Representative Todd, are there any noes or reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation has been adopted.
Okay, thank you very much, members. Next up, we have IAL. I hate to say this, but the chair's recommendation is to defer this bill. I actually helped write this original bill with Cliff Suji when I was vice chair. So, but it delays the imposition of tax, so we have to defer it. Next up, we have SB 186 HD2. Chair's recommendation is to pass this as is. Okay, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Chair's recommendation on SB 186 HD2 is to pass as is. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye, noting the excused absence of Representative Todd. Are there any noes or reservations? Seeing none, Chair recommendation has been adopted.
Okay, next up, we have SB 335 SD2. Chair's recommendation is to defer this. For the House position will remain HB 1271. Thank you very much. Next up, we have SB 1279 SD1. Chair's recommendation is to pass this as is. Any comments or concerns? Sorry.
SB 1297
Yes,
SD1. Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye, noting the excused absence of Representative Todd. Are there any noes or reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation has been adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, finally, we have SB 1027 SD2 relating to hemp. What we're going to do is take the Department of Health's, they don't really have amendments, but we're going to add Department of Health's amendments to HB 1243, their proposed HD1. We're going to basically put the regulation into this part 2 of this bill. And if you want to see the extended 20-page amendments, feel free to ask me. Any comments or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 1027 SD2, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye, noting the excused absence of Representative Todd. Are there any noes or reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation has been adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. This hearing is adjourned.
11 a.m. Hearing on agriculture, focusing on resolutions. The first measure before us is HCR 33, HR 26. First testifier is the Department of Agriculture.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Felishima Bukuro-Geyser, Chairperson of the Hawaii Department of Agriculture. I would like to highlight our testimony rather than stand. We offer comments and we have strong concerns. This resolution contemplates a complex collaboration of state, county, and private expertise to devise a comprehensive integration of resources and services to establish a framework for the development of agriculture, affordable housing, and public infrastructure, while promoting environmental and cultural practices. The department lacks the resources, staffing, and expertise to oversee this effort that has been compounded by the demands for cutbacks imposed by the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic, as demonstrated by the proposed dramatic reductions in our staff position counts and operating budget. To accomplish all encompassing planning efforts such as this, the department would require significant additional funding to hire consultants. The objectives of these resolutions are substantially akin to devising a master plan or regional plan for agriculture, housing, and infrastructure in the Kona area. As such, we believe it's more appropriate to request the County of Hawaii as the appropriate planning authority to lead the effort, as they have a Kona Community Development Plan, which was adopted in 2008. The plan touches on many issues listed in the resolutions, and they would be a better fit as the county has more experience, familiarity, and local knowledge in regional economic development. The department respectfully suggests, rather than using the Keahole Agricultural Park as the impetus for developing a comprehensive regional development plan, that the County of Hawaii be requested to identify what it believes to be key issues, constraints, and opportunities in economic development, housing, agriculture, and other priorities, with the input of the agencies and organizations identified in this resolution. Then perhaps the county can determine what parts of the existing Kona Community Development Plan should be updated to reflect current situations and possible solutions that are realistic to be updated. Under this scenario, the Department of Agriculture could provide input to the agricultural aspects of the study without being burdened with oversight of other issues such as energy, housing, homesteading, wastewater treatment, potable use, and the transportation in which we have no expertise. We thank you for the opportunity to testify on this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. The next testifier is the Hawaii Food Industry Association. Not present. And that concludes the testimony for this measure. Members, are there any questions? So I actually have a quick question for the Department of Agriculture. Would your concerns be allayed if the county was to lead this effort rather than the State Department of Agriculture?
Yes, we believe that the county should be the lead because it includes, like we stated, other issues that are important to Kona. And we believe that the appropriate plan that should be addressed is the Kona Community Development Plan, but we defer to the Hawaii County for that determination. We would definitely participate on the part of the planning process as it relates to agriculture.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to HCR 61, HR 50. Asking the Department of Agriculture again to testify.
Mahalo, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I will summarize our testimony. We offer comments and we express a concern because we already operate and enforce non-discrimination policies pursuant to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act and other federal laws. All our department policies and programs must comply with these non-discrimination guidelines. And so we respectfully suggest that this measure is not necessary at this time, since the department's current policies and programs already incorporates those desirable standards for social economic equality in agriculture. Thank you.
Seeing no other testifiers, are there any questions by the members for the Department of Agriculture? I do have a quick question. So you did talk about your policies of non-discrimination, which is not to say that you have an affirmative program to ensure equity. Is that understanding correct?
We have a non-discrimination policy, and we have a coordinator. And so I will ask Deputy Boris Atta to step forward and further explain how we enforce it.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair.
Morning.
Members. Yes, Chair Shimabukuro Geyser noted that we have the Title VI policy in place. I understand that your question is directed towards whether or not we actually have any affirmative type programs and policies that actually promote and support the disadvantaged farmers and ranchers. And while we don't actually have DOA programs that specifically do that, we do administer many federal programs that target these special populations and provide financial and other assistance to level the playing field, I guess, basically, I think is what you're getting at. But in terms of any separate specific programs at the department level, other than that, I'm not aware of anything specific.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any other questions, members? Seeing none, we're going to move on to our final measure, which is HCR 188, HR 157. First on the list of testifiers is the Department of Taxation. Mr. Choi.
Hi, good morning, Vice Chair, Chair, members. Josh Michaels on behalf of the Director of Tax. We'll stand on our testimony offering comments. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Next, we have Danielle Bass from the Office of Planning.
Happy Aloha Friday, Chair, members of the committee. Danielle Bass, representing the Office of Planning, here today on
Ms. Bass, can you speak up a bit? We cannot hear you.
Oh, yes. Can you hear me better now?
A bit better. Yes.
Okay, sorry, I'll lean in a little more. We're testifying and supporting the intent of HCR 188 and HR 157. We do provide some comments and amendments. I'd like to highlight that the Office of Planning last published a similar food security study in October 2012. The information is available in our written testimony. We would like to offer a friendly amendment that the Office of Planning conduct the study requested by this resolution instead of the LRB. And we actually envision building this study off of the previous 2012 study and holistically incorporating the hard work of the DOA in terms of Act 151, Session Laws of Hawaii 2019, as well as DOTAC's knowledge base and potential financial incentives, as well as HIAMA's knowledge base and data in terms of food security during disasters. So we do intend to holistically and comprehensively incorporate that while building off the original 2012 study. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Mahalo, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The department offers comments and otherwise defers to LRB, Department of Taxation, and Hawaii Emergency Management Agency. We just like to comment that, we understand that the agricultural producers lost 40 to 60% of their sales since early 2020. And exemptions to the GET may help agriculture producers, but we feel that through our outreach that farmers would prefer to have increased production and product sales first and foremost. And that's where we've focused our efforts to keep them in business during this time. We believe that supporting the most reasonable, safe, and expeditious return of visitors to Hawaii and the employment and return of economic security of our residents will help stabilize Hawaii's agriculture producers because we value consumption, the demand for consumption of our locally produced foods, and we believe that this effort will lead to Hawaii's increasing contribution to diversifying the economy through increasing local food production. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final testifier on this measure is Ulupono Initiative.
Good morning, Vice Chair Peruso, Chair Hashem, members of the committee. Micah Munikata here on behalf of the Ulupono Initiative. We'll stand on our written testimony in support and just want to highlight that this measure kind of looks at a few different aspects than what's typically looked at in a plan. And I think it's important for us to look at ways to look into tax exemptions or some sort of tax credit to support local producers. There's been quite a few measures that have moved through this body over several years. And I think that there is no sort of silver bullet or, one size fits all approach to this. So it would be a good idea to kind of take a look at what could truly benefit local producers to bring more local food for local consumption here within our communities. And then also building upon the emergency feeding aspect, I think it's important to continuously look at our food security in times of struggle and need, and turning to our local producers and finding ways to influence their role in an emergency or disaster time. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions? Seeing none, I do have a quick question, and it's for the Office of Planning, actually. So, Ms. Bass, is it? I hear you saying that the Office of Planning would be willing to conduct this study, and that you think it would be preferable to LRB conducting the study. But would you be willing to support the efforts of LRB were we to retain this language?
Yes, yes, Chair, of course. We're willing to support whoever we can. Just to let the committee know, I did contact the LRB and offer this. That's why I do call this a friendly amendment. We did discuss the Office of Planning stepping up, if you will. So we are willing and able to perform the study. There is data, there is information available, and it's about consolidating that information and working with our various state agencies named in this resolution. So we do look forward to performing this work through our sustainability program. But if the committee would prefer the LRB do that, we would of course support the committee and the LRB. So it's really up to you, Chair.
Great, thank you so much. Any other questions? Seeing none, we're going to recess for decision making. our hearing on resolutions, March 19th, 11 a.m. The first measure that we are going to discuss is HCR 33, HR 26. And the chair's recommendation is to pass this out with technical amendments. Are there any questions or concerns? Seeing none, chair for the vote.
Okay, members, we're voting on HCR 33, HR 26. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye, Vice Chair votes aye. Representative Lowen? Martin? Matayoshi?
Aye.
Todd is excused. Tokioka?
Aye.
Matsumoto? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Voting on HCR 61, HR 50, chair's recommendation is to pass with technical amendments. Are there any questions or concerns? Seeing none, chair
Okay.
for the vote.
Members, we're voting on HCR 61, HR 50. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Knowing the excused absence of Representative Todd, are there any concerns or no's? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. And the final measure is HCR 188, HR 157. Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Any questions or concerns? Seeing none, chair for the vote.
Okay, members, we're voting on HCR 188, HR 157. Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Knowing the absence of Representative Todd, are there any reservations or no's? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. We adjourn.